and all he's done is just transform the way rosters are constructed. Ladies and gentlemen, two-time Super Bowl champion general manager, Brett Veach.
Yeah, Brett!
What's up, dude?
Hey, how you doing? Awesome to be on this show, and great shout out to the former legend AQ himself, another big 33er.
Yeah.
So honored to be on with him
Let's
as well.
go, Brett.
Yeah, Brett, listen, that big 33 game, I was not invited to play it. Okay, I was not good enough. Obviously, I had to work my way to get to my place. You started out as a superstar football player in high school. Now you're a general manager. Did you know that your future was always going to be in football, regardless of if you played or if you coached, or is it going to be scouting? When did you know what you were going to end up doing, you think, Brett?
Yeah, well, my entire family, as you know, Pat, they're all involved in football. My brothers played. My dad actually still coaches in Mount Carmel to this day. So without question, I knew football was going to be a part of my life forever. I probably just thought I would go the coaching route and stayed at University of Delaware when I got done playing as a GA and just figured I'd tag along somewhere as a quality control coach or a position coach and hopefully work my way up. But there was a different plan that kind of unfolded while I was working with Coach Reid in Philadelphia, and I think it worked out pretty good.
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah.
Hey, 2 Super Bowl champions.
Couple ranks.
Hey, 2 Super Bowls as a GM, Brett. Let's go. From high school coach potentially to GM that has changed the way the NFL goes. Whenever you decide to cut, you have the 7th youngest roster in the NFL. You know that, obviously. 7th youngest roster in the NFL. With all those superstars, you're somehow able to stay young. Is that all because of the 10-year deal with Patrick Mahomes? And at what point did you start figuring out how to kind of do the salary cap gymnastics? Was it with that deal because you knew you had to pay the greatest player potentially of all time when it's all said and done? And how did you get to that point with Patrick?
Well, we certainly knew that deal would be the catalyst to sustain a long period of success here. And as you accumulate, there's the problems that come with having a really good roster. So when you have a really good roster, you're picking late in the draft, and you're also probably paying a lot of good players. So Pat's contract, along with guys like Chris Jones and Travis Kelce, these all start to add up and accumulate. So we kind of hit the crossroad there in the offseason when the wide receiver market just went out into a different stratosphere. And that was a time that we thought, look, we have some talented players, and we're going to be picking late in drafts, and we're not going to have a ton of cap space. So there's going to be that moment in any franchise's run that you have to make tough decisions. And so we wanted to reinvest in the youth and really try to give more balance. We know we're always going to score points. We have Pat Mahomes, we have Andy Reid, Travis Kelce. We're always going to score points. Let's start reinvesting in the youth, in particular on the defensive side. And I think it worked out. And those young guys played a lot of snaps. I think our rookies.
4 of them, right? You had 4 of them, I think, playing in the back end of the AFC Championship?
Yeah. We had a ton playing both sides of the ball. But I think overall, our rookies took the third most snaps in all the NFL. And I think the only rookie classes that played more than us were the teams that are picking 1 and 2. So, the rookies were asked to play a significant role on a really good team. So they stepped up. And I think on the defensive side, those rookies ended up playing their best football late in the season, which is when you need it the most. So it just kind of worked out that way.
Yeah, just kind of worked out. Always seems to just kind of work out for some people, and for other people, they can't find a good draft pick anywhere, let alone late in the draft. What are you looking for? Just speed? Like on the offense, you guys have more speed than anybody else, and then you trade in for speed with Kadarius Toney, and he obviously pays off big, has a touchdown on a corn dog play, and then a massive punt return for you. Is speed the number one thing you're looking for, or how do you balance all of that while still getting smart players that can handle Andy Reid's offense and system? You've done a magnificent job of blending it all together, Brett. Is there a trick to it? What do you look for?
Well, I think you kind of alluded to it. It's speed and versatility, which goes with the player's aptitude to be able to come in and learn plays. Coach likes to create matchup problems, and he likes offensive players that can play multiple positions. So if he wants to get to a play or a look that's successful, it doesn't have to be that same receiver running that play or that same running back running that play. So any guy that can come in here, and certainly speed is right at the forefront of skill sets that are valued and desired. But guys that can run, but also like I mentioned, just be versatile and line up in different positions, play multiple positions. We like receivers that can play inside and outside, and we like running backs that can go out and play in the slot. So anytime you get speed and versatility, Needless to say, those guys will be high on our priority list.
Doesn't that sound so simple?
It does.
Then somehow Pacheco falls to the 7th round, and you're just sitting there like, oh, I guess we'll get this guy that's just going to become a sensation in his rookie year and be loved by the entire team. What did you see in him, and were you surprised he was still available, and how was he still available when you guys were able to get him?
Yeah, I think so. I think last year was one of those years where the COVID and the option some players had to go back or stay in the draft. And I think you finally saw some of the trickle down effect of that, and some of the running backs ended up staying because they had an extra year. So anyway, when we got to the draft last year, we were working through our late round board, like 5th, 6th, 7th round. And we just happened to notice there was a large number of running backs. And if, that's usually a position, maybe we watch 6 to 10 players, 12 players. I mean, we had maybe 25, 30 names on the board, and it seemed like forever to get through that list. Now, Isaiah played at Rutgers. They didn't have a ton of success. And the one thing, when I had just mentioned about versatility and running backs that could catch, they didn't throw a ball a lot at Rutgers. Shoot, I think he may have had 4 targets, 5 targets. So, are we getting this big? Yeah, we getting this big bruising running back that maybe has stone hands, maybe he can't catch, and in our offense that isn't good. So I'd like to think that maybe that's what the rest of the league was worried about too, because it's such a passing league. But he went to his All-Star game, thought he caught the ball really naturally, and then his pro day, we thought it was awesome, looked smooth, and even his route running for being a 218, 220-pound back. I mean, he can get in and out of breaks, but once we saw the spring work, the All-Star games, and the pro days, and watch how effortlessly he performed in that area, then we got excited, and we were certainly lucky he was there toward the end of the draft.
I don't remember watching him at Rutgers. Did he always run so pissed off? Like, that just seems like he's so mad. Like, as you're watching him the first couple games, you're like, holy hell, this is the most angry runner in the history of the NFL. Going back, now granted the field, we can dive into that here in a little bit, but going back to the offensive mind, we were just talking to Orlando Brown Jr. there. He's awesome. He is
great.
He's awesome, dude. He like literally was just chatting to us like he was fantastic. Choosing to run the ball though with a rookie 7th rounder, like that was Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy's plan. Are you involved in that conversation? Do you know what the team is going to look like on Sundays, or are you surprised watching alongside all of us?
I would say that I'm surprised alongside of you most weeks. I think Andy and Eric, they do a great job of just feeling the game out. I think they'll have a game plan like all great coaches have going into a game, but the great ones able to just adjust and feel the momentum and feel how the game flow is going and working. And there's certainly some games where I think, and if you look at the Super Bowl, I think just looking at the numbers, common sense would have said the Eagles would have ran the ball a lot and we would have thrown the ball a lot, right? And so it kind of the reverse. The Eagles threw the ball up and down the field, and we were running the ball. So sometimes games just work out like that, and the great coaches know how to play off of that momentum and that vibe of the game, and just be prepared at every step of the way. And I got to tell you, when we had that last drive, and Jerick McKinnon, broke that run, obviously it was smart, but I'm sure we were all thinking, go down, go down, go down. But the next play to take the kneel, there was part of me that I can't remember the game. I think it was an Atlanta game a couple of years ago where they wanted to do a kneel down, but they kind of gave the ball to the running back, right? And instead of kneeling down, he was just kind of holding himself up, and they pulled him into the end zone. Yeah. And so in my mind, I was thinking, I hope they don't pull Pat into the end zone trying to just run the ball for a yard. So just getting back to the coach and knowing at every point of the game, if you have to mix it up, if you have to become a running team on the fly, be a running team on the fly. If you have to constantly remind your players about sliding and kneeling to use the clock, and then even when they're using the clock, to remind those players to don't get pulled into the end zone, back up. Coach is on his mark every step of the way, and that's why he's one of the best to ever do it.
Okay, let's talk about Coach, who's working his way into the Mount Rushmore of coaching. Some people would already put him in there, which is a incredible feat, both with the Eagles and the Chiefs, and how he's just continued to evolve through the eras, not only of football, but of humans that he's coaching. Much different humans now than it was 15, 20 years ago, and he's been able to relate to everybody, motivate everybody, and he loves cheeseburgers and corn dogs. So we are massive fans of his, obviously. Did you have fear that he was going to retire? Was that an actual conversation you guys had? Because seemingly he has answered now. All of it's in the emotions of immediately winning a Super Bowl, that he's going to hang around and come back. But was that ever an actual conversation between you guys, or was that all kind of speculation from outside?
Yeah, I think that was total speculation. I mean, I'd like to think that other than his wife, Tammy, I don't think anybody talks to Coach or knows Coach as well as I do, and that has never come up. So I would be shocked if he takes time away and comes up with a decision that is something other than coaching football. I think he's enjoyed the players and the coaches and the process his entire life, and he'd be the first one to tell you that he's extremely blessed. But he's got so much to still offer, I think, and the way this is set up now for him, I think, is really good. Where we've been together so long, and these seasons are so long and they're so draining, but for him now to kind of be able to have that time to decompress, and to go spend time with his family, recharge the batteries, start working on some new concepts and ideas, and let me and my staff go to work. Yeah, exactly. I think,
dude's awesome.
I think that it's kind of again re-energized him, and he also does a great job of staying involved with the college offenses. The coaches around him are really in tune with the college concept and ideas, and so that when he gets younger guys, he's already trying to incorporate a lot of the stuff that they were familiar with in college, and he just in general stays in touch with the younger crew and what they're watching and what they're going through and what they're experiencing in life, which I think helps them better relate as a coach. I mean, I show him
smart.
I show him clips of your show. I remember week 1.
Whoa.
When you pulled out, some of the trick plays, and you said Andy Reid comes up with all this fuckery down at the goal line, and I sent it to him, and he came back in my room, and we were laughing about it for about 5-10 minutes. So,
let's go, dude! Yeah. Tell him I am a big fan, obviously, just like I'm a big fan of yours. That's amazing to hear that we're inside that building. Thank you for the love, Mr. Veach. We appreciate that. Thank you for joining us right now. That coach GM synergy is a massive ordeal, and it doesn't get talked about a lot by either former coaches that leave, former GMs that leave, or the media. But I think on our show, we try to kind of ask that question. Sean Payton said last week at Radio Row that for him, taking a job, it was how the ownership, the GM, and the coach are going to be. That is literally his only thing. The quarterback next, but that is the most important and vital part for the success of an organization. There's a lot of places where it is not. You just talked about how long you've been with Andy Reid and the success you guys have had together. What is it about you two you think that made you guys click and have sustainable clickness, if that makes sense? Because sometimes egos getting in the way. You're in the middle of building a dynasty. The only other team that's ever been able to do that is the head coach was the GM. So there's no chance of fucking egos getting in the way of anything. How have you and Andy Reid clicked so well, and how have you been able to do it through all this success as well? Because normally it gets kind of sideways one way or another.
Yeah. Well, I think to start, just the simple fact that I really came up and I've experienced every level. I mean, I started out as coach's assistant, and then from coach's assistant, I was an office scout, a Midwest scout, a Southeast scout, a national scout, and then a kind of co-director. So on one end, I kind of, in regards to building a draft board and doing a free agency plan, I've kind of worked at every level. But I think Coach has seen me work at every level, and we've been together so long. So I think that there's such a huge amount of trust and respect. And I think when Coach goes into a free agency or an off-season plan, we have worked together for so long that when I come to him and let him know what me and my staff are thinking in regards to here are the guys we're targeting with some other guys, but this is what we're thinking, and I kind of mirror that with the draft board and positions and stackings, basically trimming off all the fat for him and just giving him real information instead of watching 14 offensive linemen. Coach, take a peek at 2 or 3 of these guys. We'll probably select one of them. Here's what we're thinking. We've been together for so long now, where it's more of a I'm cool with it, and still peeking at some tape, but we're not draining everything out of him. Having him watch all this tape all this time. I mean, he's really just coming in, touch base with us, get inside of our minds, see what our thinking. But Pat, I just think over the years there's so much trust now. It's one of those things where obviously, I wouldn't sit there and dial down to Coach Reid on a 3rd and 3 and say, here's what I'm thinking, Coach, let's run this. Because obviously I mean, he's a brilliant Hall of Fame coach, and I'm nowhere ever trying to put myself in his category.
Well, you're going to be.
Yep.
Yeah,
Hate to
say it, you Pennsylvania fuck. I mean, this is going to happen.
Drafts keep going.
Yeah, Dynasty, you're in the middle of it. Fucking A. You're going to be having that gold jacket on. You're going to be giving a speech. It's going to be fantastic. Canton, Ohio, not too far where you're from.
Yeah.
Going to be so many Veach fucks in the crowd. I mean, this is going to happen. That's real life. So we won't just let you blow by that. But you're saying he has the same trust that you have for him.
Yeah, exactly. So in the similar fashion, he doesn't sit there. He knows how hard my staff work and how hard I work, and he knows that when we come to him, with a solution to a problem, that like we went over every possibility.
Tyreek,
so,
hey, moving on from Tyreek, was there any? What was that? Was that a?
Yeah.
I'm sure Andy Reid, who had Tyreek Hill running 4 miles a play and obviously created him into the market that he's in. And Tyreek Hill is a game changer regardless of where he is. He's one of one, an anomaly. Was that an interesting conversation whenever you come up to him and talk about that? Or did he understand the business of it? Obviously, you guys have been around each other long enough.
Yeah. Well, that one was a little different because he understood it, but he didn't love it. He was high-fiving for. I mean, because it kind of went in a weird flow where we went to the combine and we met with Drew. And we expressed interest to, re-sign him and let's get him back here. And we had some positive conversations with Drew. Left the combine. A week later, free agency starts. Christian Kirk deal happens, and Adams gets traded, and then the market went to another world. And then when there was 2 days of silence from Drew, we were like, okay, here we go. All right, we're getting the call here. So, then I kind of filled coaching as free agency was happening. Like, coach, I know we thought we were going to go in this direction with Tyreek, but just so you know, I hadn't heard from Drew in a couple days. The receiver just signs for a ton of money in Jacksonville. Another one just gets traded. This is going to be hard because now these contracts look completely different. So, trade, let's all put that on our radar. Let's see what it looks like. But let's not be surprised by these possibilities. And then as the day goes on, it's like one of those looks more likely, and then coach, yeah, it's going to happen. So it was kind of like a buffering period for me where I wasn't hitting him with just one shot. It was kind of leaking it. So bits and pieces where when it finally came, to the decision day, I mean, coach was already, just like death by a thousand cuts. He had kind of known it was coming.
Yeah, he understood why it was happening as well. And that's one of those incredibly difficult decisions that you have to make in your seat that a lot of people can't make, won't make, and then obviously they do make, and then it backfires completely. Shout out to the Titans.
Yep.
Boston Connor has a question for you, Mr. Veach.
Yeah, Brett, on that same exact subject with Tyreek Hill, when you're looking at players and what contracts are going to be, are you trying to project okay, in 5 years, the wide receiver market is going to be where it's at now? And do you try and do that? And then when you look back at the Mahomes deal, did you realize, hey, right now, 10 years, $430 million, $500 total might be a little ridiculous, but, halfway through this contract, we're going to be the ones that are looking back this is probably one of the best, if not the best contract ever given to a quarterback, both for the player and for the team?
Yeah, well, we certainly did that with the quarterback contract, just trying to project the market outward, just because those contracts are going to be the biggest on your team, and they're going to take up the most percentage of your cap in regards to your total roster. So to your question in regards to the quarterback in his contract, that was something that we wanted to give ourselves a long runway because on one end we're going to try to project where these will be, but also the contract's long enough so that we and the player can adjust it. Because
that's going to happen, right? I assume in the next couple of years that's going to happen again.
Yeah, it's inevitable to happen at some point. But we have quarterbacks coming up this year, right? We have Herbert and Burrow, and so where they are now, because our contract is so long, that's adjustable. The numbers for Pat and how that will come out. I mean, you have a built-in runway to make adjustments there, but you also have built-in runways to potentially work the numbers to to create more space on a given year if you need to. So it just the more years you have. The longer you have to adjust the number for the player and adjust the number potentially to help your team in any given year. Those are tricky to come by, though, because people always say, well, I mean, that's the benchmark, and that's what all these teams should be doing, and you guys only – it takes a very unique setup. You have to have an ownership that wants to give. I mean, that contract is basically $500 million for 10 years. No getting out of it for us. I mean, we can mix the numbers and move the numbers. You have to, and listen, it's a violent league, and it's players get hurt all the time. And I know the quarterbacks aren't taking hits like other positions, but still, 10 years is a long amount of time. And you have to get the ownership who is good with a 10-year contract in the NFL, which is unheard of. So there's buy-in on the ownership. There's certainly buy-in on the coaching staff and the personnel staff that we're not finding anybody better than this, and that seems like even silly to say now because we aren't. He's the best.
Yes.
But then but then the player too. Like the player has to say. I mean, the player knows he has leverage, and the agent knows he has leverage. But when you take a step back, I mean, they have a ton of securities in the contract with injuries, protections. He's in a place where he loves, and he genuinely wants to do things to help this organization, and not just this organization, this city. So you have to have the stars in alignment to pull off a contract like that. I don't think it's like some wizardry by our staff or just some concept that just came down from the heavens that we are giving to this player that no one thought of. No, it just takes three people that have so much trust in one another that they're like, screw it, let's do it.
Oh, so you just got to have like
luck.
One of the greatest. No. A lot of hard work to get to this point. You got to have one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time already.
That's right.
You got to have one of the greatest coaches of all time already.
Seems easy.
And you got to have one of the greatest GMs of all time already.
Okay.
Simple. And then you got to have an ownership that has $500 million to put in escrow too.
Bingo.
Right? Because that has to take place, and to say that they'll invest 10 years. But the quarterback also has to commit to a city for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be in Kansas City. No, I love Kansas City. Hell, I live in Indianapolis. So do not take me as somebody that would bash a city for its size or how many humans are in there. You can have a fucking great time anywhere. And there is great things in every single city. But he's a megastar. Patrick Mahomes is a megastar. He's marquee. He's billboard. So him committing to staying in Kansas City as opposed to what could potentially take place in LA, there's two teams. Yep. New York, for his brand, there's two teams. Down in Miami, there's obviously that whole place there's cranes everywhere. It's blown up even more, and it's like the hot spot. So like, I think that is an amazing deal that you guys laid out. And I guess we are kind of taking it for granted.
Absolutely.
When we're like, why didn't this team just fucking do a 10-year deal? There's a lot of commitment there, Brett. That's a lot of commitment.
A lot of long-term commitment that you can't get out of, and like I said, it requires and entails a huge amount of trust. And Pat trusts us that we're going to surround him with great coaches and players, and we obviously have the trust that he's going to continue this epic level of play for years to come. And the owner, trusts in our training staff too to keep him healthy for all these years, and our organization to keep pushing him to get better. So it's a lot. It's a leap of faith, but I think if you're going to take a leap of faith like that, these are the people and the players that you do that for.
What do you got to do? You got to go out on a limb. That's where all the fruit is. AJ Hawk via Bobby Carpenter.
Yes.
Connor, what were you going to ask real quick?
Yeah, Brett, real quick, because of that contract and everything you just said and how, great it is in Kansas City and with Kadarius Toney, are you finding it hard now that GMs are kind of like, you know what, fuck Brett Veach and the Chiefs, I don't want to trade with these guys and make them better? Or, is everything kind of cordial?
I think it's cordial because I think at the end of the day, teams are always going to do and make moves that benefit themselves, and they're going to operate in that manner. Now, I mean, I'm sure that there are some teams where if we were involved in a trade or some type of acquisition, and I think in general, when you are faced with similar options from teams and one team has one or is, winning currently, I think you kind of would work a deal with a lesser team. But I don't think I've noticed over the last few years teams just not picking up the phone calls. I think just in general, if teams can get what they believe is 1% better, I mean, they'll call anybody and try to work anything. And believe me, I mean, we worked that trade with the Giants, and the Giants for the longest time didn't want to do the trade because, they knew we were going to have a good record, and they knew that the compensation wouldn't be as good. And so that we tried to get him in the spring, and it didn't work out. And then we continued and finally got him before the trade deadline. But, if they had better, they would taken it. And at the time, Kadarius didn't play all year, so it was hard for us to do more. So it was one of those deals where
you know what we were saying?
Yeah.
We were saying, of course, Veach gets the next Tyreek Hill.
Bingo.
Like that, of course. That's what we're saying about you. And you know what the rest of the league's saying about you? If that guy was good enough to be in Veach's locker room, when they get cut, everybody's getting picked up to other teams. This is what happened to the Patriots for a long time. Anybody that would get cut from the Patriots is going to another team. That doesn't happen with, like Low-level teams, guys clear waivers, they're going to the XFL. You know what I mean? Or they're going to a practice squad somewhere. If, like, the Patriots cut somebody for the last 20 years, it's like, if he's good enough for Bill Belichick, he's good enough for our team. Like, that's what you're getting viewed like that, dude. That's awesome. You should feel honored about that, I think, Veach.
No, well, it feels good. It means that, you and your staff has worked hard to collect talent. It's funny you mentioned that. Our first year here in 2012, 2013, when we came over as a staff, Seattle had that little window where they were rolling, and it felt like every time that, well, I guess right at the end of training camp when we made all of our cuts, we made a bunch of cuts that year. I think every player that we claimed or acquired off waivers, I think they're from the Seahawks. So,
hey, if it's good enough for them, is it good enough for us? Is that kind of the thought?
When they were hitting the golden window there, when they were rolling it, and but it goes in cycles, and we're hitting the Chiefs cycle now. It's our job to see how long we could make this cycle run and extend this window here.
Yeah, seems like you got Patrick Mahomes. You're going to be A-okay. And Andy Reid. AQ Shipley has a question for you.
Brett, when you decided to revamp the offensive line after the last Super Bowl, right? I think Thuney, everybody knew who he was, right? Creed Humphrey, everybody knew who he was. You go get him. You get Trey Smith in the 6th round, who, by the way, I love as a football player. Absolutely love. When you were weighing the medical on him, right? Like, as a GM, when do you take risk versus reward, and kind of how does that play out?
Right. So that's a great question, and that's obviously why Trace fell in the draft. I got a really good training staff. Rick Burkholder has been here forever. Our team physician, Mike Monaco, has been here what seems like forever. I try to keep the medical, when it's that important, I try to keep it real simple. Like, it's a yes or no from the docs. I don't try to coerce or, try to sugarcoat anything. I'm like, here it is, doc. And I don't even tell doc the name, because obviously sometimes you get medical information. Sometimes it's important because it's a first-round tackle, and sometimes they get it. It's potentially a free agent lineman, and I don't want docs to get swayed by, all right, this is a first-round pick. We got to make this guy clear the bill of health here. So I don't do that, number one. And then secondly, I just make it black and white, where if he's clear, he's clear, and if he's not, he's not. And I'm not going to sit there and have a debate with a doctor, because I'm not a doctor, and if there's any liability, I certainly don't want that on the organization whatsoever. And Mike Monaco, since working with him, I felt like he's one of the more conservative docs in the combines. In fact, this, when you get to the combine, you get all these combine grades, right? And they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Rarely see a 5. 5 is like heart failure potential. I mean, really bad. Like, some guys get diagnosed with stuff and they become a 4 or 5. And fortunately, at the combine, it gets identified, and there've been places
life saved.
Life-saving surgeries just because stuff got identified. But once you get into the the 1, 2, or 3s, it's really up to the team. I mean, obviously, so 1's the best. You like to be 3 or less, but the 4s and the 5s you got to really watch. And with Trey, he was one of those 3.5s. It was like right in the middle of a 3 and a 5. I turned it over to Mike Monaco. Mike has a history, as far as I'm concerned, when I'm working with him, he's always leaning conservative or no. So a bunch of the guys that have been drafted over the years that were considered medical risk, we were already a no, way ahead of time, off the board. So when I sent him the file of Trey Smith, I almost in my mind said, well, I sent it to Mike, this will be a no. He says no to almost everything. And like 2 or 3 days later, I hadn't heard from him. And the draft is in like a couple weeks, and I told Mike, I called him back and I said, you got this file on Trey Smith, right? He just said, yeah. And he said, listen, I think he's going to be okay. I know he has a family history of this, but I'm looking at all the charts. I sent it to 2 experts out in LA. They told me the same thing. They said, if we can get him in here before the draft, we can do 2 tests. If he passes them, I feel good. Well, because COVID, we weren't allowed to bring him in to do the test. So we had to roll the dice. And we brought him in. We did the test. He passed the test. He's been great ever since. Now we'll have to continue to monitor him, but it's just a story on how this whole organization works as one unit, and that was a great case of a doc helping us out and making that selection.
It seems like you're leading a fantastic program over there. You should be incredibly proud, and we appreciate the hell out of you joining us, man. You're a really good dude, and obviously you're going to go down as a GOAT in Canton for the rest of your life. So congrats on everything, and thank you for your time, Brett.
Thank you, guys. It was honor to be on the show. Really was. Appreciate it.
Man, you're the man. Ladies and gentlemen, Brett Veach. Thank you.
Yeah, Brett!